Life isn't black and white. It's a million gray areas, don't you think? It is a wonderful quote from Ridley Scott, and it's a great way to open up our discussion about gray areas in finance. Now, I'm a financial advisor. I've been doing this for over 13 years, and I help people get to financial independence as quickly as possible with strategies, not just doing investing. So, when I talk about gray areas, I kind of came up with this idea. I just watched Oppenheimer recently and talk about a subject matter with lots of gray areas. Now, the movie is fantastic, by the way, but that's a subject matter that has a lot of gray areas for me. Probably has a lot of gray areas for a lot of people because you could sit there and say, this is this or this is that, and this was horrible, and, we shouldn't have done it. And I agree with that. I mean, obviously, I don't want an atomic bomb being used or being created. That's scary. But we were also very affected. My family was taken to the internment camps. I'm half Japanese. So that side of the family was in the internment camps, had possessions taken away from them. And my grandfather's family home was, I believe, about 10 miles outside of Hiroshima when the bomb went off. We were very lucky that somebody wasn't in town, but it affected them because they were scared about the radiation. They didn't know what was going to happen. And their whole livelihood was gone. I mean, the town that they'd go to for groceries and for, their lifestyle was gone. And it was heartbreaking. Obviously, we went recently, not recently, but I would say about, maybe 20 years ago. Maybe that wasn't that recently. Maybe 15 years ago. I don't remember. About a long time ago, though, we went to go visit the family home and meet some of the relatives over there. And we went to the museum in Hiroshima, and it's a heartbreaking museum to go through, but I think it's really important to always understand what's going on. And so that movie really showed the gray area in a matter. Because instead of saying this is right or this is wrong or this is how it should have been done or blah, 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 there's a lot of gray area. There was a lot of mixed emotions of what was happening, who was involved, what they were focused on, how were they going to win the war, the sentiment of basically the American people. They were exhausted from World War I still. And now we're in World War II because the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and the Japanese won't give up. They won't give up. What are we going to do? And so even being that close to it, and obviously not being alive, but being that close to it, there's a lot of gray area in that subject. And I thought about it and I thought, it's interesting because we think of finance as black and white. And really, there's so much gray area that it makes it complicated and it makes it interesting to think about. Why is it not this or this? Why isn't there a rule around that? Why is there a gray area around it? So I chose 3 things that I talk a lot about with clients that have a very black and white feel to them, but there's really a lot of gray in them. So let's get started with that. So the first one is budgeting. Okay, so you hear people like Dave Ramsey and all those people out there that are like, you need a budget. You don't have a financial plan without a budget. And I hear people say, you don't need a budget. You shouldn't do a budget. I've actually done a video saying, do you need a budget? And I kind of am on the side of you don't really need a budget because here's why. The budget doesn't usually get followed through. It's like an ideal of what we think we should be spending, but is that truly what we're spending, right? And it doesn't mean that you aren't aware of your spending. You're not aware of, this is how much I'm bringing in and this is how much is going out, because that's what a budget is for. But a budget is not something that people can necessarily stick to on a regular basis. And so when you look at a budget, it's either yes, you should have one or no, you shouldn't. To me, it's gray. To me, it means that you need to have consciousness around what you are spending your money on. You need to Be aware of where your money's going and how much is going out versus how much is coming in. That's what you need to focus on. And that's very gray. And so, how do you do that? I've given advice before of looking at credit card statements and that kind of thing. But you've got to find what works for you that you're going to stick with. And that's the gray area. It's not necessarily yes, a budget, no, a budget, but it's how do you find what works for you so that you are a conscious competent, as I've heard that phrase before. How are you being conscious and being aware of what you're spending your money on? Because you cannot control your money if you don't know what's happening with it. If you just turn a blind eye to it, you will never be in control of your money. Okay, so that's one gray area, budgets. Number 2 is tax deferral. Now, we're given these things called 401ks at work, and we're like, yes, save money on taxes, put it in there, put it in there, put it in there. And I am not telling people to not put money in their 401k because that depends on your circumstances. But I am telling you that I want you to think about tax deferral now, tax payment later. Tax payment later might be worse than paying tax now. And so there's that balance. It's not, yes, put all your money in the 401k and don't put in anything else. Or no, don't put it into the 401k at all. It's often a balance. It's often put some in the 401k, but then maybe put some in other accounts that maybe don't have that tax deferral ability, but maybe they'll be there for you without as big of a tax consequence in retirement or when you need them. Maybe you wanted an account that doesn't have the 59.5 rule. Gray. And a lot of people get very stuck on, should I do this or should I do this? Should I only go up to the match? Just take a pause. It's really that gray area. It's finding that balance, right? Being aware of where your money is going and being able to forecast a bit on how it's going to affect you. Because when you have required minimum distributions and other things that come out of your tax deferred accounts, which a lot of people don't know about required minimum distributions, if you want, I'm happy to do a video on it. But those are distributions that are being told to you that you have to take out at certain ages. For most people, it would be 75 that are younger, but you don't have control of your money. The government's telling you how much you have to take out. Is that something you want? Maybe it's finding that balance, gray area. Number 3 is your involvement with your accounts. Okay, so hear me out. We often say, oh, I don't ever look at my accounts. I can't watch them. I can't watch them that much. Or I look at them every single week and I want to know, is it going up? Is it going down? So how involved should you be? Should you be adamantly looking at your accounts all the time? Or should you never look at it because you're afraid that you're going to make an emotional decision? Gray area. If you're looking at your accounts too much, you're not really able to see the long term of an account, the long term of an investment. If you're only concerned with the next week or 2 weeks or month, then you could be making emotional decisions that are not good for the long term. However, if you are not looking at your accounts at all, and you're trusting somebody else to invest them for you and you're just not watching them, or you're just doing the automatic investing and you haven't looked at your 401k forever, you are not being aware and you're not being conscious of what's happening. And therefore, you're letting money control you and you are not controlling it. So what's the balance? A lot of times I will tell clients every quarter look at statements. But for some people, that's too much. Maybe it's every half a year. Maybe it's once a year that they look at their accounts. Again, it's gray area. You're starting to see the gray area. The gray area is about personalization, right? We have all these black and white things like 401ks, budgets, different accounts, saving versus spending, all this stuff that's very black and white. But the gray comes in because it's about personalization. And your friend Sally, who's doing blah, 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 and it's doing really well, doesn't know what your gray area is. And you don't know what hers is either. So, when you're looking at your finances, make sure that you are looking at the black, the white, but also the gray. And the gray can always be changing because it's gray. Sometimes it's going to be darker, sometimes it's going to be lighter. Depends on the mix of black and white that you're making, right? And so it's going to be fluid. And so maybe a habit that you created for yourself when you were 25 and now you're 45 doesn't work anymore. And we've got to change that gray area to make sure that we're not just sticking to the black and white, but we're moving and flowing with the gray. That is how you get a good financial plan. So, if you are interested in finding out what your gray is, give us a call at One Vision Retirement. We are always happy to help. There is a link down below for you to schedule a get to know you call. And we just get to know you and talk to you for a couple minutes to see how we can help. One Vision Retirement, your retirement in 2020 vision.